All right, so today we're reflecting on your lesson with, actually, you can tell me the lesson was about.
Yesterday the lesson was on, oh gosh, for real?
It's
No,
up
it was the
there.
sum of the angles, yes. It was the sum of the interior angles of a triangle being 180. So we worked on just finding those angles, finding those measurements.
Okay,
our-
and your focus was on questioning.
Right, making sure that I attempted to question them and make sure my rigor was stayed up. That was like my goal. Kind of failed the first and second period, but then I got some coaching and got better questioning and let the kids, do that talking. So that improved from the fifth through eighth period was much better.
And I would say that because I'm such a great coach, it wasn't my coaching, it was Region 4, but. So we're going to reflect, we're going to do this a little bit different because we're reflecting over 2 observations, not just one. We watched yesterday, then you had coaching with Region 4, and then I watched today.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you think it went yesterday?
So yesterday, my expectation was way high. I thought that, like in the first video, I thought that they were going to do okay because we practiced it in Lone Star. But it didn't happen like that. It was a little confusing because I threw in a variable. Variables in the angles, like a 2x, 3x, and x. And I thought they would understand that, but they didn't. So
What did you see that you knew they didn't understand it? What were you seeing?
There was just like mass confusion, kind of. It was like they didn't really understand that it's like 2 apples, 3 apples, 1 apple. They just wanted to, they didn't really know what to do. They were kind of confused. They didn't really understand and combining the like terms. So once we broke it down like as apples, they were like, oh yeah, that's 10x, I got that. So that helped a lot. And then just changing up the sequencing of the lesson. So first I had 2 warm-up questions. One was just find the missing angle with an x, and the second one was with each angle had an x. So I thought they could do them back to back, but instead I decided to let them do the one they knew first, just with the x degrees, and then showed them a quick little video about a triangle, about the sum of an angle of a triangle, and then revisited the 2x, 3x, 1x, and then we went into like a worksheet on that. So that was good. It made it different for them.
So you had coaching.
Yes, Region 4 definitely coached me for
Coaching,
sure.
and then how do you think it went yesterday afternoon? Or you can just talk about today. Like, how did it go after the coaching?
So after the coaching, things went like to the top. I think they went straight up because the kids were actually more engaged. Because I backed off a little bit. I was giving them too much. I was like answering my own questions in first and second, but then coached third and fourth period, and it was totally different. They were like awesome.
How are you different? Like, what was different?
I stood back, I laid back. I asked why, how do you know? Why do you know this? And just kept making their brains think. So, it was like almost like popcorn. One would get excited about what they knew, and the other was like, oh yeah, they'd add it and say it different. So it was cool. It really helped out.
And how did you get them to talk more?
Just asking those questions. So like certain questions were like, I have my little note card here. I'd say, what do we know about this triangle? What do you know? And you'd get all kinds of answers. Some of them would point out that, oh, I see that there's one angle's 52 degrees. Oh, I see that I see cat around, because we label it CAT.
Right.
I would say, what do you notice about the angles? How do you know? Just asking them just for their knowledge.
Was that yesterday afternoon?
This was yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
yes.
why, when you were talking about the dog and the cat, I was like, where was I during
yes.
that? Okay, I thought I was helping them with the opposite thing today.
Yeah,
but,
and then it's like, how can you use what you already know to solve this? Just kind of prompting them.
Okay.
It's like I backed up, but not really. It was like back up off the answering the questions. Just give them more questions.
Right.
So that helped out.
And that was our focus. You also mentioned, though, I don't know if you mentioned in the video, is she also helped you with sequencing?
Yes, the sequencing, because I think that's where the issue was, why my expectation didn't it didn't meet my expectation, because the sequencing was a little off. And, but I guess it comes from experience to know that. And once we changed the sequence, it was awesome.
So you saw a difference in changing the sequence and the importance of sequencing?
Super engaged. Yeah,
you
super
saw
engaged.
a change in the engagement because
I let them do it. It was total student-led.
And it sounded like the scaffolding was more in the right order.
Yep.
Okay. And then, so compare yesterday. Let's talk about that. What comparisons might you make between the lesson you had planned and envisioned and then what really happened yesterday before coaching, and then we'll talk about after.
So
Actually, we'll talk about today.
for today or yesterday?
Let's talk about just yesterday morning.
So
What you envisioned would happen versus what really happened.
yeah, so I envisioned that it would just be easy. We'd get it done. It was just
Had
gonna
done it
be
in Lone
yeah.
Star.
I mean, the choir was gonna be singing. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be perfect. But no, so it didn't go that way because, like I said, I threw in that variable and I just didn't think it would be that big of a deal.
Right.
But because like you said, I keep my expectation high for them, and I thought that they could handle that, but it just didn't work out. But after that sequencing change, it switched it up. It was like immediate difference.
So then let's talk about today. How did you envision today? Because now you had fixed some things yesterday afternoon. Fixed.
So
Changed
today, I thought my expectation was high. Like I didn't think I gave them 2 problems where they just had to do X. They were given 2 angles, find the third angle. So gave them 2 problems just like that. I said, let's take the extra X's out. But then they wanted to say 1X. Because I was like, no, that's not the measure of the angle. They didn't want to, I don't know, they didn't want to like move forward and add like they did yesterday because I think we left on a note where each angle had an X in it.
Uh-huh.
So I think there was some confusion there.
So they said that it was 1X, but they didn't want to find the X.
They wanted
just
to
said,
say that
"Oh,
was
I'm
just
done."
like, well, kind of like when we
Like
looked
it's
at it,
1X,
they were
I'm
like,
done?
yeah, they were just, when you ask them what the measure of it, they were like, oh yeah, that's just like 1X. Like, it didn't dawn on them that was actually a value, a measure.
So they weren't making the connection between the 6X and finding X, and then just finding X.
Right.
Oh.
So it was,
Okay.
but then again, we talked about it and then did it a little different second period, and it flowed differently.
Okay.
So,
What'd you do
I think-
differently?
so I
Oh,
kind of
okay.
talked about the misconception before they got started.
Okay.
Addressed it first. Because first period told me that they didn't understand. So, they showed me the misconception, they demonstrated, so I was like,
Sometimes
oh,
that's how it
okay,
happens.
this is what we do. So I let them know this is not the same as when we had the 2 apples, the 3 apples, and the 6 apples or whatever. It's not the same.
This
because,
is just a missing measure.
right, this is just the missing measure. And I showed them, I'm like, remember we had to find the value of X, and then what do we do? They're like, oh yeah, you multiply by the coefficient, whatever the X equals. So I'm like, yeah, but don't do that here because we're already given 2 angles. So that helped out. Just explaining that misconception that first period told me,
Okay.
and then it switched it up.
So let's say second period.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think second period went compared to how you envisioned today would go? Like, let's say you went to bed last night, you're envisioning this, the choir singing.
Right.
And so let's now look at second period. How close was it then?
So it got closer. The only missing piece was they didn't have the vocabulary. They didn't have the language, the academic vocabulary to give me what I wanted. I was trying to get them to talk to me about what they noticed about the short angle being like opposite of the short side or across from the short side. They used the word opposite, but I don't think they really knew how to describe it. They used it, but they just kind of didn't really know. First period was like saying up, down. I think they used the word across or diagonal. And then I had one student in first period that actually just shouted it out. She was like, oh yeah, it's always going to be across from the short side or whatever. So then prompting them with the language for second period that we wanted like the line segment and the angle, like to use those words. Once they understood that, it went better.
Can you explain a little bit how you prompted them?
So
Or somebody
it was,
prompted them?
I think we said blank is opposite of blank, but they needed to know like, first we had to coach them on what is BC. And I think the worksheet told them like, line segment BC. So they had to understand like that's what that is, and then you want to call this angle A. So once we got that established, they were able to say like line segment BC is opposite of angle A or whatever.
Okay, so did you think you made progress on the vocabulary?
Oh yeah, and I think this afternoon will be better, even better.
And how will you know for sure?
I guess just listening to the kids, like listening to their feedback, listening to what they're telling me, if they're answering the questions I'm looking for, if they, when they have that aha and they're like, oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
So when their eyes open up and it's not partly cloudy anymore, it's sunny, then I'll
Right.
know.
What about tomorrow?
Tomorrow's gonna be a review and a quiz over the last 2 days.
And what about the vocabulary? How can you make sure that they good with the vocabulary tomorrow? Have you thought
That'll
about
be
that?
part of it. That'll be part of the quiz. I'll make sure that that's part of the quiz. probably in my mind, I haven't made the quiz yet, but in my mind, I'm thinking like maybe a word. I don't know if I need to give them a word bank or if I need to just ask them, what is this called? You know, how do you represent? Or like, if I say BC, what does that mean? You know, and maybe I let them open end, like tell me how you would describe. Maybe I'll just draw an arrow. Describe this line here. What is that? You know, just kind of let them.
Right.
And then I can see quickly, like I'll be able to flash through those quizzes and see who doesn't get the vocabulary and who does. And I actually think I'll let them use their notes. I'll let them use that worksheet we used today because it mentions on the table line segment and measure of angles. So I think I'll let them use that just to kind of help them.
Have you thought about doing something maybe verbal, even like a more, what do I want to say?
Like
I want to call it an informal assessment.
Okay.
Like something like that tomorrow, like continue starting tomorrow, like where you ended today or something like that.
I could, because I didn't implement the graffiti that I thought I was gonna do. I'd switched it up, so
Yeah,
I could
which is
do
fine.
that. I could do the graffiti where they would, you know, maybe give them A, B, C, D, pass out a card, and this is your triangle, this is your triangle, and have them do it on butcher paper. I mean, I could do that. I mean, like just to see something written.
I was even
or-
thinking about, like, remember how she did the, like the fill in the blank sentence frame?
Sentence frames.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
I want to call it a sentence stem again.
Yes.
She used a
So
different
do
word
the
for
frame
stem.
like blank is.
Like a sentence frame.
Okay.
Maybe even on the quiz, use the
Yeah, maybe
sentence
that. Yeah,
frame
that's a good idea. That's
for
probably what I'll do.
them, and then have them write the sentence themselves. Or
Right.
something.
Give them the sentence frame and have them do it. Yeah, complete sentence because they do have a 7th grade writing star. Those that are going to 7th grade. So yeah, that's good practice. Then.
But I mean, do it how.
No, I mean, but
didn't-
that's-
This is just
I'm
getting-
open.
thinking about
No,
it.
but yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Because I
open.
turned into consultant for a minute versus coach. Sorry.
That's okay. No. Yeah.
Right. Okay, and so what learning do you want to take away from the whole like planning it out, the coaching session with Region 4, and then this conversation?
I want to make sure that I work through the problem, see kind of script out the problem. You know, not necessarily work through it, but script it so that I know what to say, what I think they might say, and then how to have that comeback line to fix it or prompt them a different way if they don't give me the right answer. So just keeping my little cue card with me, keeping my notes, and just keeping in my mind that it is a student-led classroom. It should be, so that they can, teacher directed, student led, right? And just kind of giving them that opportunity to show how smart they are.
Right, and why is that important? Why do you think
Well,
it's scripting, and why do you think doing that is
Well,
important?
first of all, it gives me immediate feedback on what they know and what they don't know. And it gives them that math confidence that they do know. And I try to make sure I call on those that I even ask them, and my kids aren't afraid. It's a very safe environment. They're not afraid to say they don't know, because
They're perplexed.
yes, they are perplexed. That's what they say. I'm perplexed. So if one person is perplexed, then we're going to talk about it.
Right.
We're going to fix it. We're going to phone a friend, because I was turn around, I think that kid wants to talk to you. So just having them, because kids learn better from other kids. I mean, I tell them all the time, you learn bad stuff from each other, you can learn good stuff from each other too.
And you also said that people were, by you making questions more open, some people were talking that
That
don't even
usually
do their
don't. I have
homework
some
and
kids that haven't turned in homework in 130 days. And that's okay. But they were talking today.
Right.
Giving them that math confidence, because like you said, orally, verbally, I can tell if they know or not. So that's helpful.
But if you don't ask the questions, it's almost like 90% of them are sitting there
Right,
quiet.
because
You
it
have no
looks
idea what they
because
know.
you're going to assume everybody knows.
You're like, look how smart they are, because those
Yeah.
two people, I use the thing.
Yeah, and I prompt them too. I'm like, wait, nobody has questions, they're going to fire me. I was like, you can't know everything. I'm like, somebody asked me a question. So yeah, so that usually they start laughing. They think that's funny when I say that, but it's true. I'm like, they wouldn't hire me if you knew everything. I'm like,
Right.
come on now. I was like, I need you not to know certain
Something
things.
I used to do too is I would be like, okay, when I get done, I didn't say, okay, what questions do you have? I didn't say that. I say, okay, ask a question. I told them to ask a
Right?
question.
Yeah, have to.
And I think I do that in my PD sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, ask a question.
Right.
I don't say, do you have a question?
Right.
I'm like, ask a
one.
question.
Yeah, it's more of a command.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask a question.
I ain't kidding you. I know you have questions.
Yeah.
Like, I was teaching it and I have questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, how might you apply or no, this one. How might you ensure that you maintain focus on what you want to bring away from this? Which is like your questioning.
Yeah, just keeping
And
that,
scripting.
just keeping that in mind every time I'm planning a lesson. Just like getting those questions. Typically, like it's almost just like I don't know, question stems for me. Like my card today says, "What do we know about this triangle?" But what do we know about this parallelogram? What do we know about this trapezoid? Or I mean, like it could totally be used in other ways. Just keeping that first little part.
Is that what you started with yesterday after the coaching?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my first question. Tell me what you know about this triangle?
Okay, you
Yeah.
started more general, open.
And open it. Yeah, so I guess it was kind of open-ended.
Open-ended.
Pardon the interruption.
And
Jacqueline,
sometimes I
welcome
forget to
the
direct
front
them back
office
to
with her
that even,
things.
because I helped you
Jacqueline,
plan it out a
welcome to
little
the front
bit.
office with her things.
And so, yeah.
So I think to keep focused, just remember the questioning. Remember that these kids are like, yes, they are low, but they're super smart. They do know things. And when they're allowed to talk, they're more engaged in the lesson. They're not fidgety. They're not talking to their neighbors or, being silly. They're like alert, because because that's what they want to hear, each other's voices anyway. So it's like giving them that opportunity. But, like me, I'm like, I don't like a lot of noise.
Right.
But I think I've allowed more noise like since September because I don't like a lot of noise.
I
'Cause
know, you don't. That's okay, though,
uh,
because your kids are very engaged.
Yeah, but
because
as long
you
as you're
have very
engaged
strict-
noise, like I had a
yes.
kid today tell me his face and his teeth hurt, but then he's over here talking to the girls about something irrelevant. I said, I thought your face and your teeth hurt. Like, why are you talking? So it's just like that, like staying on task, just making sure
Yeah.
that they
You're very
are on
consistent
point.
about it.
Yeah.
And I think if you're consistent, I think
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So yeah.
And then the last thing is, as you reflect on this conversation, how has it supported your learning?
Definitely makes me aware, like you just said, like I had a totally different thought for the quiz, but it makes me more aware of like different things I can do. So like doing that sentence frame and then having them produce a complete sentence, that's like, I didn't think of that. So that
Okay.
I just learned something. So yeah, I tell the kids all the time, I'm a lifetime learner. I want to learn all the time. So just like being able to modify and adjust things, that works for me. And I think that just like totally enhances my learning. Just like keep questioning, asking questions and asking, Region 4 questions about how I can do this, asking you questions, and making the kids, just stay engaged.
Would you have thought of, I mean, this isn't really part of the conversation, but would you have thought of scripting
No,
out the,
wouldn't have thought of it.
That
So
helped.
scripting's a new thing. Sequencing didn't really, because we're given this bright pink paper when we get here to Hempstead, that bright pink notebook that tells you how you're supposed to run your lesson. 5-minute warm up, blank mini lesson, whatever. But it doesn't always go that way, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with switching it up because you can prepare for it to go that way. But what if it doesn't work out? Like yesterday, I thought, okay, warm up, mini lesson, video. I thought it was going to go this way, but no, it had to be first warm up question, video. Second warm up question kind of became a mini lesson. Then we went into like the core, like the meat of it, like the practice of it. Yeah.
I think it's cool how you just switched one thing and you saw such a difference immediately. So the
Immediately.
immediate coaching.
So
that's
sequencing
actually
has
kinda
to be
cool, too.
flexible. I don't think you can stick to a script for that. I don't think you can stick for every lesson. You have to just kind of see. I mean, sometimes you go out there like we did. Like I went out first period and was like, whoa, that didn't work. So
Right.
second period, it was like, let's change it. Or I think it was fifth period we changed it. First and second was like my test, and it didn't work. So fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, perfect.
Do you think you'll do that more like on your own probably
Yeah.
now that you've went
Yeah,
through that
because I'll
process?
think it'll help me think. Like it prompts me to think. Okay, wait a minute. Maybe
about
I didn't
that
script this
sequencing?
right.
Or
Yeah. What
maybe-
about that
maybe that's
sequencing? Yeah. So even if I already have it scripted, it still can be switched
Yes,
up.
yes.
So just to make sure that I'm not practicing a misconception or teaching them that.
All right, this is exciting. I think
Yep.
that it was cool to do it over the first observation.
Yeah.
And then you guys did the coaching. I missed yesterday afternoon, but then I saw today even the changes and the asking the why, the,
Yep.
the questioning was so different. So,
Gotta know it.
all right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
The end.